very much, dear colleagues. So, as my colleague Paulina mentioned, with regards to the different levels of advocacy, I think the question that presents itself is with regards to the steps that we have to take and make sure that the change is tangible and bring about change, tangible change, if you like. Therefore, we have to focus on 8 steps, and perhaps I'm going to talk about the 2 steps together. And the first step is to identify the problem or state the problem. What is the problem that we have in hand, and how can we find information? Do we have evidence that there is a problem? In addition to that, if we have data or survey, then that will be icing on the cake. Now, we also have to focus on different experiences of of people, patients with MS. So we have to document this, and we have to look at it from a human aspect, a human angle. So with regards to these 2 steps, we have to understand the decision making process as well. So how will this decision making be undertaken? And we also have to learn from previous experiences, particularly when we deal with step 1 and 2, because if we have previous experience, then we will benefit a lot, because it will give us a jump start to know how other entities or other parties leapfrogged the challenges, if you like. So once we have identified the problem and we have analyzed and did our homework and research and whatnot, then it is pertinent to move into step number 3 and develop a specific objective as far as the advocacy is concerned. So we have to understand what we are aiming for and what are the changes that we are aiming to bring about. So if we have specific objectives, then it's quite easy to achieve it, and we will have a lot of achievements on the way. Therefore, if we say, for instance, our objective or our goal is to facilitate the reach of medication for people affected with MS, then definitely we can gauge it, we can measure it, and this is how we develop advocacy objectives. It has to do with identifying the target audience. So, who is our target audience, and will they help us in solving the problem? They might be individuals, they might be institutions, and we have to also look into the influences who will help us achieve the goal. For instance, if it's a minister that we want to influence, perhaps the spouse of the minister might help us achieve that, particularly if she's an activist. So this is something that we also have to understand. So step number 5 now, we have to identify our allies. So this will help us move forward, because we'll be moving ahead with determination, and we will know who is on our side, and this will help us overcome the challenges. And in order to overcome the challenges, I cannot overemphasize that it's important to iron out all the details with the allies, with the partners, and make sure that our goals, our objectives commensurate. And there is a way for us to amalgamate these goals and objectives, so as our advocacy campaign can actually be effective and efficient. So this will have an impact on our advocacy campaign, because if the goals are not aligned, then there might be duplication of effort and miscommunication. So when I say identifying our allies. We might forge a partnership with institutes or foundations. So it is really important to identify our allies. Now, number six. Here I'm talking about resources, and I mean human resources and also financial resources. um, the volunteers, definitely we have to take that into account, and also we have to look at it from a financial standpoint. This step is quite important. I think we can also merge it with step number seven, which is creating an action plan. So we have to create an action plan in order to understand to what extent we need human resources and financial resources. So all this put together, I think once we have the action plan, it will help us implement the advocacy campaign to the fullest. So there are some templates that we can use. It is ready for use, and the idea is to focus on who are the agents of change and who can help us achieve these goals, and what are the steps that we have to take in order to influence the decision makers. And of course, I cannot fail to mention the risk. Any advocacy campaign definitely happen to have an element of risk, so we have to include a plan for that risk. So how are we going to be responsive, and how can we minimize the risk as well if we face it and when we face it? And then when we put forward an action plan, then it has to have a clear message. And because I mentioned this because this is very important. When we have a clear message, this will help us make a change, a tangible change, and actually solve the problem in hand. It is important not to forget the actions or the procedures that we require from the target audience, because when we talk about a problem, decision makers or patients with MS, the first question that will resonate in their mind is, how may I help you? So we need to answer this question from the get-go, and we have to have clear goals, clear objectives, and clear actions. So our advocacy campaign should take into account the political and social aspect in the society. For instance, if we want to ameliorate the condition for the patients of MS, we have to take into account the current status quo in the country. Given, for instance, now that we have this pandemic, coronavirus pandemic, how has it affected the country in question? So we have to incentivize decision makers to help us achieve our goals. So we have to make sure that we join it with something big. So this is more regards to the advocacy. I can give you a number of examples and techniques that we can undertake when it comes to advocacy, face-to-face meetings, video, short videos, or paid ads. There are a number of things that we can use, so it depends on the problem in hand, the type of project that we have, the type of advocacy campaign that we have, and the best way to bring about change and help us achieve our goals. So, as I have already mentioned, when we talk about advocacy campaigns during pandemic times, it's unprecedented and it's quite difficult. So we have to be quite innovative, quite creative in order to achieve these goals. So we have seen a number of foundations and institutions trying to um, advocate in a different way. And we have India and we have other countries as well. And I think we will allude to the Indian experience during the COVID-19 pandemics. Now, the final step is implementing, monitoring, and evaluating the advocacy campaign. So we will need indicators, positive indicators and negative indicators. If it's quite positive, then we have to keep on going on. And if the outcome or the indicators are negative, then we have to go back to the drawing board, amend things, rectify things, and make sure that the advocacy campaign can come into fruition. So, in a nutshell, this is what I have in 8 steps how to build blocks of advocacy. I thank you for your kind attention.